Throughout history, some individuals have committed acts so disturbing, so inhuman, that their names are etched into the darkest corners of our collective memory. These aren't just stories of murder. They are tales of obsession, manipulation, and terror that gripped entire cities, and in some cases, the world. Today, we're diving deep into 10 of the most notorious serial killers of all time, from cunning charmers to cold, calculating monsters. This video contains real accounts, so viewer discretion is advised. 1. Ted Bundy, the charmer with a deadly secret. Ted Bundy wasn't what you'd expect a killer to look like. He was educated, articulate, and handsome, even working on political campaigns. But behind the charm was a man who stalked and murdered young women across at least 7 states in the 1970s. Bundy lured victims by faking injuries or asking for help, only to abduct and kill them. He escaped custody twice, even representing himself in court during a nationally televised trial. Bundy confessed to over 30 murders, but many believe the real number is far higher. He was executed by electric chair in 1989, and even then, crowds gathered outside the prison cheering. 2. Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee cannibal. In 1991, Milwaukee police made a horrifying discovery in Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment. Body parts in the fridge, a barrel of acid, and Polaroids of his victims. Dahmer targeted young men, often luring them back home before drugging, killing, and in some cases, consuming their remains. He later admitted to killing 17 people between 1978 and 1991. What made Dahmer's case even more terrifying was his calm, almost emotionless demeanor during interviews, as if he were recounting routine tasks. He was sentenced to multiple life terms but was murdered in prison by another inmate just 3 years into his sentence. 3. John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown. By all appearances, John Wayne Gacy was a normal suburban dad. He was active in local politics and even entertained children as Pogo the Clown. But beneath the surface was a monster. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy murdered 33 young men and boys, many of whom he buried beneath his house. He targeted vulnerable teens, often posing as a police officer or offering them work. Gacy showed zero remorse. At his trial, he joked, painted clowns, and dismissed the victims as nobodies. He was executed by lethal injection in 1994. His crimes changed how Americans viewed their neighbors and their clowns. 4. Jack the Ripper, the Shadow of London. In the foggy streets of Victorian London, Jack the Ripper left a trail of horror in 1888. He brutally murdered at least 5 women, all sex workers in the Whitechapel district, mutilating their bodies with surgical precision. The killer sent taunting letters to the police and press, some stained with what he claimed was blood. Despite massive public outcry and over 100 suspects, Jack the Ripper was never caught. His identity remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in criminal history, sparking books, movies, and conspiracy theories to this day. 5. Andrei Chikatilo, the Butcher of Rostov. One of the most brutal serial killers in history, Andrei Chikatilo terrorized the Soviet Union from 1978 to 1990. He murdered 52 women and children, often in isolated forest areas, using extreme and prolonged violence. Because Soviet authorities were reluctant to admit serial killers existed in their society, Chikatilo operated undetected for years. Even after arresting the wrong man, who later died in prison, the killings continued. When Chikatilo was finally caught, he confessed to dozens of murders in chilling detail. He was executed in 1994 with a single gunshot to the head, the method used in Soviet death penalties. 6. Robert Pickton, the Pig Farm Killer. Robert Pickton ran a pig farm on the outskirts of Vancouver, Canada. And what he did there horrified the world. Between the 1980s and 2001, Pickton lured vulnerable women, mostly sex workers, to his farm, where he killed them and allegedly fed their remains to his pigs. He was charged with 26 murders, but investigators found evidence of many more. The case also exposed deep flaws in how police treated missing Indigenous women. Picton was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years, the maximum sentence in Canada at the time. 7. Aileen Wuornos, the highway killer. Aileen Wuornos was one of the rare female serial killers in history, and her case stirred both horror and sympathy. A former sex worker, Wuornos shot and killed 7 men in Florida in 1989 to 1990. She claimed they tried to assault her and that she acted in self-defense. Her troubled past, marked by childhood abuse, mental illness, and poverty, led many to question how society failed her. She was executed by lethal injection in 2002, but her story lives on through documentaries and films like Monster. 8. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Between 1984 and 1985, California was paralyzed by fear. A man known only as the Night Stalker was breaking into homes, killing at random, and leaving behind satanic messages. Richard Ramirez showed no pattern, no mercy, and no remorse. He was caught after a citizen spotted him and tackled him in the street. In court, Ramirez famously flashed a pentagram and said, "Hail Satan." He was convicted of 13 murders and sentenced to death, but died of cancer in prison before execution. 9. H. Holmes, the Murder Castle. Long before serial killers were even a concept, H. Holmes was building a house of horrors in 19th century Chicago. His hotel, later dubbed the Murder Castle, was filled with secret rooms, trapdoors, gas chambers, and incinerators. During the 1893 World's Fair, Holmes lured tourists to their deaths, though no one knows exactly how many he killed. He confessed to 27 murders, but may have claimed up to 200. He was hanged in 1896, but his legend still lives on as America's first documented serial killer. 10. Pedro López, the Monster of the Andes. Pedro López is one of the most terrifying serial killers you've probably never heard of. Active in Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru during the 1970s and 80s, López confessed to murdering over 300 young girls. He was convicted of 110 murders in Ecuador alone. Shockingly, he was released in 1998 due to lack of laws for serial crimes, and his current whereabouts are unknown. Many consider him one of the deadliest serial killers in recorded history. These killers left behind fear, tragedy, and unanswered questions. While justice caught most of them, their stories serve as a chilling,